Welcome to another episode of the Career Revolution podcast, where we believe that big ideas for careers start small and it's never too late to get started. I'm your host, and my name is Licia Dewing, and I'm a career strategist. And I completely believe we can create careers that we love, and we can find our calling. What it takes is the right amount of mindset and the right amount of action steps consistently to career strategize ourselves back to our purpose. Today, our guest is CRYSTLE Kostanovic, who is a mental performance coach, a high performance coach working with professional sports. She has the most incredible business function and process, and she's going to share and tell us all about her journey. She's also accredited with the International Coaching Federation. Her background is in drama, theatre and drama. She holds a master's degree in applied theatre and drama from UCT. And she's going to share where she went, her revolutions along the way, where she grew and developed, and what got her to where she is now. And without any further ado, CRYSTLE, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. Hello.
Hello. All your magnificence and pink hair it is. That's why I love this as both a podcast and a video blog, so that we can see you. CRYSTLE,
Amazing.
Thank you for being here. I couldn't think of anyone more exciting to speak to now about unlocking their career revolution and their calling. And I want you to start telling us about, just tell us about your career and where it started, because you were teaching drama in an all-boys school and now you're coaching high-performance athletes. So where did that all begin? How did drama go to the sport? Theatre to the sports field. Drama.
Definitely not a straight line. I can tell you that. I've got a really massive, multifaceted career past, because I didn't just do one thing. I've done so many different things. But basically, while I was teaching drama at this all-boys school, I realized that I wanted to be of more use. So very often the boys would come to me as their agony aunt, or their mentor, wanting to speak about things that were bothering them, or, how they could deal with things. And because I was the drama teacher, I was the safe space. And I realized very quickly that my background with drama and theatre was really beneficial, because you learn about the human psyche and you learn about human behavior and, why people do what they do and what gets in their way. And you really understand the human experience. And I thought, I really loved studying psychology when I was doing my undergrad. And I wonder if I could study it again, but not to be a psychologist. I never wanted to talk about the past. I wanted to talk about what can we do next. And then I realized this actual profession that does that. So it was while I was looking for resources, while I was a teacher, how else can I help these kids? What life skills can I teach them in a way that's going to benefit them, to really assist them with all the things that were on their plates? Because, when you're in an all-boys school in Cape Town, especially the one I was at, which was quite prestigious, there is so much expectation of what you have to achieve and what you need to do. And if you don't know how to cope with all of that emotionally and mentally and physically, then you start burning out, even as a kid. So that's when I just started coaching. And then through the coaching, realized, oh my goodness, this is exactly where I need to be. And as I coach, realized I really like high performers. These are my people. And then that's how I niched into that.
So what I like about your story is that, and I didn't know this, is that you didn't actually move into coaching because you didn't like what you were doing, teaching. You just wanted to do more of it and to help more. So as you said, you were the safe space because you were the drama teacher. Listen, I had some drama teachers who were not the safe spaces. So you were the safe space because you were the safe space, and that's your superpower. You create safe spaces for people, whether that's as a drama teacher, whether that's as a mental performance coach, or whether that's just as a South African pitching up and being in the world, So I'm going to give you that. You're the person that creates the safe space. So you weren't dissatisfied necessarily with teaching. You just knew that you wanted to get more and be more. So it was really, your evolution was an expansion into something more. And then you Googled, and then you searched, and then you followed curiosity, like, what can I do? Where can I do? What can I train? And then you knew you needed to study more, because your profession, you need to have that certification or the validation, stuff. You can't,
But also, like I said, so when you study drama and theater, you do it. I mean, a lot of the stuff while we were studying coaching, I was like, oh, there's a crossover here. The language is different, but the concepts are the same. So it was very easy for me to understand a lot of the concepts of coaching, because you use that for creating characters, for creating a story, a conflict between personalities. You need to understand all of that in order to create good theater and good drama. So, so it was really a really, really easy thing to understand. But I did feel that I wanted to be able to do it in a way where there was a process to follow, because I was kind of like just, drawing off experience or, what I did know. And I thought, well, I'm pretty sure there must be like tools or a model that you use or something. And then, I definitely discovered that when I started studying coaching.
Okay, that's so interesting. So at what point were you able to say, sorry, guys, no longer teaching, I'm going over there? Because there's that transition of where it gets really messy before it gets really clear, and where do we go? And I think that talking to that thing is something that will be so useful for people listen in any field, in any industry. It's like that's point A off, switching that off and switching onto something else, and who you have to become in that process. Sometimes it takes years for people. Sometimes it takes a couple of weeks.
Yes.
Can you talk to us about that?
With pleasure. And it was easy. So when I started teaching, I love teaching, and I did it because I was studying my master's and I could do it at the same time. So it all worked out beautifully. And then I got my master's degree and I got married, and all kinds of things were changing in my life, but my job was staying the same. And I'm a very ambitious person. And yet it felt like in my position, there was no more growing. So I'd reached an apex. So I did everything I could within the boundaries of my role. So I kept adding things to go, well, I could do more, I can do more, I can do more. I'm hungry, I'm hungry, I'm hungry. But there was nowhere else to go. Like the next thing was, I must be the principal. Like that was in my head. Okay.
Yes.
Because it was in my mind, I was thinking eventually one day I'll become a principal, because that's the ladder you have to climb. And I was frustrated in my position because I felt like I was limited and there was no more growing that could happen, except obviously me. And it was through that frustration, on top of going, how can I help these kids at the same time, that I went, oh, there is something else I can do. And there's a very interesting thing with teaching. They call it teacher's guilt, about wanting to leave. So it's like quite a well-known phenomenon within the education space, because you feel guilty about leaving the children. So not because you're not just leaving the position, you're actually leaving these kids who you fall in love with. You have relationships with them and you're watching them grow, and it's almost like a breakup. So there was probably about 2 years of me within this frustrated period going, oh my gosh, I need, something needs to change. And then when I started studying coaching, I started learning about myself, and I started learning like what those feelings were and, what they weren't, because that guilt makes you think that you're wrong, but it's not wrong. It just doesn't feel nice. It's okay. It's okay to want to leave. You're not bad.
Yes.
So
committed to life as a teacher, as you say. Yeah.
And the thing was, I didn't want to leave my job to be a teacher somewhere else. It was like I was going to do something else that meant more to me, because the coaching, once I started coaching, because then I started actually coaching the kids with permission, and realizing, wow, the impact, the positive impact from this is so much bigger than the hour and a half I get with them a week in a class. So I'm still going to be getting the reward that I get as a teacher, but on a much higher quality scale, but maybe just on a lower quantity scale. And I actually asked the school for a sabbatical for a year off, because I needed to go and get experience as a coach. It's part of, when you're training, it's part of the things that you do. You have to have hours. And I just said, I'm really struggling to manage everything, and I want to make sure that I finish this, but then I can come back. But in my back of my head, I was like, this is my out. This is the way I can get out.
Yes.
So they did give me the sabbatical, and that was at the end of 2019. And then they phoned me at the beginning of 2020 and said, please, can you just come back for one more term? We promise. We found a new teacher, but she can only start in the second term. So I was like, okay, no problem. So I came back for one more term, and I'm so glad I did, because it was almost like, because I'd already felt, okay, I'm going on my sabbatical, going back for one term, it just kept on confirming why I was leaving. It kept confirming, like, everything was happening where I was like, I'm at peace. I feel good to leave. Everything's going to be okay. These kids will be fine without me. I'm not there. I'm not the only person that they will find someone else. They'll be okay. And then COVID happened in the second to last week of school closing in the first term. And then I never went back. It just didn't, because of all that chaos. It just never found my way back.
So in a career progression perspective, you're one of the very few people who benefited from the global pandemic, because it gave you that
big time. Yes. Yeah. And it was my plan to go full time. So, but then of course now I wasn't planning to go full time online. So that also presented its own challenges.
Yeah, isn't it interesting? We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about suddenly the thing that you want, you get pushed into sooner than when you're ready, but then you just keep running and you pick up on that. Going back to that transition, the messy, the stuff, there were two things that you said. The first thing that was that I loved knowing that there's teacher guilt, because I think there's professional guilt in many instances. But in my work with over the past 10 years, that transition point is where people might sometimes get to the point of, stuff this, I'm resigning right now, cold turkey, out of here, can't anymore, because the messy is too much to bear, and there's a sense of an immediate change. And we're kind of socialized into that, because we're told, work hard, climb a ladder, and then you just go up the next rung of the ladder and the next rung. So when you're not sure that this is a ladder you want to even climb, when you don't know where the rung is and you're not sure where to look, that's the messy, right? It's like, well, there isn't a ladder. You can create it. Where do you want to go? It's all up to you. So the responsibility becomes the onus of, well, it's up to me, my discovery. And in that process, it can be, where do I go next? You were going into curiosity. What can I learn? What can I do? So you were looking at augmenting this idea of, how can I serve more? What can help me with that? So there must be a tool. You said there must be a tool. There must be something out there. And that, I think, is just so that, like, it's such a fundamental thing that we all need, right? Is when it gets messy, follow your curiosity. What's out there? What's holding you? What's exciting you that you might want to explore further? Because that might be the very answer. Sometimes we don't know that, but at least we follow the curiosity. So I love that. I just want to reaffirm that you were doing the career strategy process thing right on top. But the second thing was that you knew you needed to get out of it. You needed to plan a break. You were teaching, and you couldn't, there was no shifting. So you had to take that sabbatical. Yes, it was part of the studying, the hours, but as soon as you take one hand off the rung of that invisible career ladder, right? Suddenly you got the movement of seeing all the other places and spaces that you can go. And that, I think, is something that's so powerful that, again, we're not socialized into doing. Work hard, climb the ladder. Don't take your foot off, just work harder. If anything, you're not sure what you want to do, push harder on the pedal and climb faster. No, the very thing you need to do is actually create some space for something magic to come into play.
Absolutely. Even if I think
Isn't
like, yeah, I mean, if I reflect now, I no longer wait to break before I make a decision. You know, like it's almost like you said, we are conditioned for this. I know that I got to a breaking point. So, and then, you know, you make a change. And what's so fascinating about this work that I do now, I'm so aware of it now. And I'm so aware of what's going on when it's happening. And I can go, you know, instead of waiting for like the 20th time that it's hurting me, on the second time, I'm like, okay, let's do something different. Let's try something else.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very fascinating.
And what a powerful mental performance coach that makes you, in a sense.
Yes. Yeah, no, really, it does. It's a gift for me and others, I can tell you.
Yes, and those being in your environment, because that's the way you approach things completely. So before we carry on with more stuff to talk about, I wanted to go back to and then it was online. Suddenly you were jumping in it. So you studied the qualification, knew you wanted to do this, had the hours, were going to go into the teaching, but suddenly everything shifted and changed. Look, I mean, fear, panic, we were told, you know, face your own mortality if you go grocery shopping. I mean, what a crazy time, terrible for all of us. And I honor and respect the pain that so many people went through. However, there's something to be said about, I think this is what I want to do. This is where I'm going to go. I'm following my curiosity. I'm building out a pathway. I've taken my hand off the ladders. Things are starting to happen. And you're not the only person who I've spoken to who, this is where I'm heading, but then all of a sudden they're in it, doing it. They wanted it, but came up quicker than they thought. Suddenly they're there. And there's an element of being completely taken by surprise with that. Suddenly in the online, all right, I'm not drawing the analogy with COVID here, but I'm using the analogy of suddenly you had to go into doing something that you were planning on doing anyway, but it came a bit sooner, right?
Yeah. Oh, yes. But I mean, look, yeah. And it's like, you know, when it was online, it's nonstop. Online doesn't go away. You know? Like at least when you're like going somewhere and you're coming home, like there's this like physical change that you go through where your mental
decompression.
Yeah. Whereas when it's online, it's 24/7. It was really interesting because we actually, when we were studying coaching in 2019, we were using Zoom. It was already like a part of our, you know, language and a part of what we were doing. However, not everybody else was doing it. So I remember trying to get clients on Zoom to go on Zoom in 2019. It took 45 minutes just to explain how to like get it going, you know? And then all of a sudden you were like in 2020 and you're like, here's your Zoom link for your coaching call. So it was great for me. I was like, this is amazing. People know what to do now. But then I also have to go, well, how am I going to get clients? Like, how is anyone going to know what's going on? Because for me, I'm very extroverted, but I also like to have my alone time. But, you know, going and talking to people and hanging out and, you know, just like socializing, that's my way of people finding me. I really had to adjust that because I'd never, as a teacher, I was very mindful of social media in terms of don't be on it. Like very curated. Yeah. You know, like my kids mustn't see me doing anything or swearing or, you know, I can't like say something that's like out there or, you know, whatever. I mean, not that I was being censored, but you're just mindful of it because you don't want to have to like deal with a child like watching something and not misunderstanding. And then it's like, you know, there must be a meeting. No, I'm not into that. So I was just like, don't go on social media ever. Like only post like, oh, look, we're at the beach, And then I was like, well, I have to use this now. It was so scary for me because I was so afraid of perception because of my intense awareness.
Obligation to your children and
Yeah,
awareness.
the teenage experience,
Mm.
So yeah, it was so interesting. But I mean, I literally took to it like a fish to water, I can tell you that. Or duck to water, whatever.
Absolutely. I was going to say, and look, and we're not talking, 5, 6 years. We're talking about 4 years ago, a little bit, 4 years ago. And your business is an online powerhouse of energy and amazing stuff that you're doing. So you then transition from, I know where I want to go. I know what I want to do. Whoa, I'm in it. Thanks to kick off the push from the universe, and then going into that process of working on your business. How do I do it? What do I do? All the learning curve that goes through that. I mean, it's one thing to, I'm an entrepreneur, then it's, hold on, all the things, did I sign up for that? Did I, do that, decide that? And yet here you are, so magnificently, you, as you say, took to it like a fish to water and developed and grew. I'd love you. That brings us to the question I wanted to ask you about your, you recently ran a launch. It was the Confidence Boot Camp. Like, who didn't see that? You must have been living under a stone because it took over the internet. It was so exciting. Tell us a little bit about that, because that's an opportunity. I'd like to lean into hearing how that, so, I mean, tell us about your business and how your business operates and works, but tell us a lot about the Confidence Boot Camp.
Sure, with pleasure. So I do work with professional athletes. And what I've noticed is that everyday people, obviously we aspire to be like them. We watch them and we what's the word I'm looking for? Like we adore them, and we admire them. Thank you. And I realized that people could learn a lot from what I do with professional athletes, because they are like normal people. They just have a hyper focus on something. So if you're and it just so happens to be that they're hyper focused on the thing that's entertaining you. And you can physically see something about what they're doing. Whereas there's so many other people out there who are hyper focused and you never even know what they're doing. So and a lot of the people who were contacting me online who were not professional athletes were asking me about helping them with their confidence. That was the number one thing that kept coming up. And I thought, okay, well, let me see if I could do something to just like set the foundation so that people can understand more about confidence, understand what it isn't, and understand that you can learn it. It's a skill. It's not a personality trait. And so I just developed this 5-day confidence boost camp, and it was half an hour a day where I taught the psychological concepts. So not to like, please don't like switch off when I say that, because some people go like, oh no, it's so cool when you know how your brain works and how your psyche works, like your life changes. And I just slowly started teaching people these concepts. And by day 3, I was getting emails saying, I just did the thing that you said in the course on Monday, and it worked, and I can't believe it, and everything's changing for me already. So it's one of the things that I offer, is this way of setting the foundation for what it means to be confident. And then when you're ready later to do your one-on-one coaching, you're going to come to me, because there's always something new every time you level up. Every time something happens for you and you're in this new role, or you're starting to understand your identity, or like if I think about being a teacher and then becoming a coach, it was a change in my identity. I had to remove the one thing and take on the other thing. And then now I'm bringing more of the teacher with me, but now I'm like looking at it from a coaching perspective. So it's very different. And so that's the type of stuff I do. I do online things where people can learn, and then I do the one-on-one coaching where people obviously get much deeper work for themselves, and then I do group things. So yeah, it just depends what it is, how best you learn, and that's what you need to experiment with.
Yeah, absolutely. So the girls studying drama, did
Yes.
you ever imagine that you would be coaching our rugby team? Because that's what you are now doing, right? You're now the mental performance coach for the Springboks,
Yeah.
for the rugby, for the rugby union.
Yes, so I am the official benefit partner for the My Players Rugby Union that services all the professional rugby players in South Africa, which is very cool. So thank you so much. Yes. So yeah, it's really incredible. I would not have said that. Coaching wasn't a profession when I was studying. There was no such thing. So even like entrepreneur wasn't a word that we used when I was studying.
No.
I even actually, you know what? Let me tell you something. I even remember, I think in grade 11, because that's when you usually have your career, like things that come to your
Guidance.
school.
You're good with talking, go to sales. You're good with numbers. You should be an accountant,
Yes.
box
Oh, yeah,
labels
yeah,
that you
yeah.
have to, yeah.
And I mean, I remember the word entrepreneur came up somewhere along the lines. And I remember I can't remember if it was a teacher or one of the girls saying, oh, entrepreneur is just a code word for unemployed. I remember that. So in my mind, that wasn't a thing. Like,
No.
that's not a thing you do. So yeah, just so fascinating to think back to that. But no, I mean, when I was studying specifically drama, I never really wanted to be an actor. Like, I can be in the spotlight and I'm very happy to do it, but I don't know, I don't tend to go towards that. I know that it might be you might be thinking I'm lying because of how I look, but I promise you, like, I actually realized in my honors that I love to direct. That was my favorite out of everything, because you do a little bit of everything when you're
Choose all
studying.
your electives.
Yeah, it was amazing. And I thought, oh, directing is so cool. Like, you get to see this thing you've created. And then in the process of like creating this vision, you're also working with the actors, and you've got to get the best out of them so that your play looks the way you want it to. Or they bring something and you didn't even like think of adding that, because now they've got the special ingredient that you never knew about. And I just thought, this is so special. Like, this feels so much better. It just felt like a great fit. And I think that's why coaching for me is so exciting, because it's also like a teacher. A teacher is like the person that helps you become the astronaut, become the scientist, become the accountant. And the coach does the same thing. Like, I'm really here to get the best out of you. It's not about me. And I love that.
Absolutely. And I want to ask you, when you were talking about the career guidance and so forth, just out of interest, because it's a little bit of my personal fascination with everyone that I work with, is early career kind of mentors and guides. And I mean, do you come from a family of entrepreneurs? Have you sort of come from traditional kind of conservative career people? Like, where you, as the journey of teacher, drama, directing thing, it makes complete sense. We see it and we get it now. But that just came from you following your curiosity. You didn't have somebody saying, go do this, go do that, right? I mean, what were your career,
Oh my gosh. So my father's a chartered accountant. And I have to say that because he says, I'm a chartered accountant, like,
not an
he's very
accountant.
proud
Yes.
of that. And I'm
Worked
proud of
hard
him.
to get it.
He really did. He worked very hard. And he's an immigrant. So worked doubly hard, didn't speak English when he moved into South Africa. And yeah, so I always thought maybe I would be that, because my mom's also a bookkeeper, or was a bookkeeper. So that's the kind of, we spoke about numbers in our home. We spoke about, like, it's really, and I love numbers. I love maths, and I do love it. Like I love science. I think it's so interesting and exciting. Um, but I mean, my mom really did nurture the love of art in us. She took us to plays like as much as she could, whether it was like the free play that was in the park, in the botanical gardens on the weekend with some students or whatever. Like my mom was really good at showing us things so that if there was something that interested us, we would find it. And my father was very supportive in terms of me studying. So when I did say I want to study drama, there was no like, oh, you want to study drama? What are you going to do when you grow up? He was like, okay, go for it. Let's see what happens. I think he did every now and then say like, don't you also think you want to maybe add, and then he would add like whatever subject he was thinking about. But I mean, he really, he was very supportive for everything. And I mean, I did PR as well, that I did not enjoy. I don't remember anything from that course except the one lesson was presentation is paramount. That's the only thing I remember from PR when I studied it. So I really, and I think, when I was at school, teachers would see something in me. So, I mean, because I was the loudest person in the class, they automatically think you must be on the stage. Fun. And so we were in a lot of productions at school, and that was nurtured when I was at school. But it really wasn't. I don't remember ever being like, that's what I want to be. And no, it wasn't like that. It was like, well, let's go see what's out there.
So you kind of just followed your curiosity. You were afforded that luxury, supportive parents. What do you want to do? As you said, you sort of teachers nurtured that. They see that. I mean, we do who we are and how we show up, and the very light that we hold within us kind of comes out, whether we're stuck in the wrong job or not. Who we want eventually comes to the surface, right? We can't limit that from happening. And your journey, your revolution has really just been following your curiosity. I mean, there's no other way of defining it. And I love that exploration that you took to it. I'm so excited to continue to watch you and see where you go and stick within your stratosphere too, because I want some of those apex thinking thoughts. But I know that you've got a career revolution tip for our audience, for those who might be listening. So I do want you to share and tell us, what is your career revolutionary tip?
Yes, with pleasure. Nothing is a waste. So if I think back to everything, and I mean, I've worked in so many industries. So not only was I, given the amazing support from my family to study what I wanted, while I was studying drama, I was working. I was in sales. And I mean, I used to sell roses. Those people who used to irritate you at restaurants, I was one of those. I was the top saleswoman. So, like I did everything. I just was like, let me just go and do this thing and see what happens. Like there's, nothing is permanent in a way. So if I think back, every single thing I studied or every career experience that I went through, all the things that I've done, they are all pieces of my puzzle. Like they're really nothing was, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Like I can extrapolate a lesson from every single thing that makes me exactly where I am now. So I like to say, don't stress so much about what you are on studying. You can change your mind. And I mean, not to sound like in a privileged way, you really can. Very often when you're studying, you get the credits for the things you're doing, especially in that first and second year. So you're really not, there's no way of going, oh, is this the right decision? You'll see.
And you wrote this to me. You said, our brain has a great way of directing us to things that are interconnected, even if we haven't consciously realized it yet. So that super powerful engine of our human brain is going to hold all of these interconnections and steer us forward. That's kind of like letting it take over, or, letting our intuition, follow that curiosity, follow the thing that's popping up, that's closest to you. We don't need to figure everything out today. We just need to know what we need to do tomorrow, and the next day, and the next day, and the next day. It's steps forward.
Absolutely. And just give yourself the gift of going, what did I learn? What is the lesson? What skill did I get? Because we don't do that. We just go, oh, I did this thing. Okay. And what's the takeaway? Because unless you consciously go and find it and see and label it, it's just going to sit there in your library of, of memories.
Oh.
So,
yeah. Krystle, where can we find you? Where can we support you? I know that you're on LinkedIn, and I love the pink brain emoji that you use.
yes.
And to those in the audience who are catching the LinkedIn live of this conversation, clearly you're going to be following Krystle, but where else can we find and support you?
Oh my gosh, I'm everywhere. So you can see my name is KRYSTLE. And then I'm .coach on Instagram, on Facebook. I'm The Millennial Coach on TikTok. You can find me on my website, mentalperformance.co.za. Yeah, I mean, you will find me. You can't miss me.
Great.
Look for the pink hair.
Great. I'll be sure to make sure that we share all those links in the description box on YouTube and certainly in the LinkedIn Live. Thank you, Krystle Kostanovic, mental performance coach. Thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for helping us learn a little bit more about our journey through yours and your messy middle and your figuring things out. Big ideas for careers do start small, and you've got some big things coming. I can just sense that.
Oh yeah, thank you so much. I hope so. I hope that there's there was a little, what is that? Oh my gosh, that's it's just like interrupted my thinking.
Absolutely. We're going to see you online and see you in more spaces and places, and we're going to see your results out there on those fields with our great rugby union nation. Thank you, Krystle. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.